Good afternoon. Welcome to our council meeting of the 19th of June 2023. I'll just remind you that an audio recording of the meeting will be made for minute-taking purposes and will last the length of the open meeting. The audio file will be available on the council website after the draft minutes have been circulated. I'd like to welcome our elected members. We have an apology from Councillor Nicholson. I'd like to welcome our Chief Executive, Nigel Morris, Acting General Manager Community, Matt Atkinson, General Manager Infrastructure, Andy Baker, General Manager of Corporate, Trish Kirkland, Executive Manager of the Office of the CEO, Tash Hunt, and Executive Assistant to the Mayor and elected members and takes our minutes, Tanya Cregan, and the other staff who are here to support the agenda. I'd like to welcome the members of the gallery, Brian from the Victor Harbour Times and the Fleurieu Sun, and Georgina from the Southern Argus. The Alexandrina Council and its communities acknowledge the Nursery people as the traditional custodians of lands and waters of our council district. I ask you all to please stand for the local government prayer. Almighty God, we humbly beseech thee to grant thy blessing upon the works of this council. Guide us in our deliberations for the advancement and the true welfare of the people of this district. Thank you. Just remind council members if they have an interest in a matter before council to disclose the interest to council and provide a full and accurate details of the relevant interest, and you to declare that interest before each item. Item 1 is the confirmation of the minutes held at our meeting on the 15th of May and the 22nd of May. There's a recommendation that they be received. Move Councillor Maidment. Do you want to do them separately? I would do the 15th of May first. Move Councillor Maidment. Second, Councillor Oliver. Any discussion? Put it to all those in favour. Against, it's carried unanimously. So now we do the minutes of the 22nd of May. Move Councillor Coomans. Second, Councillor Maidment. Any discussion? I've put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against, it's carried unanimously. Item 2 is adjourned debate. There is no adjourned debate. Item 3 is presentations and deputations. 3.1 is a deputation regarding the Adelaide Rally for 2023, and we have Tim Possingham, who's the event director, to hear and let us know what they're proposing and what it involves for our council area. So welcome, Tim.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, elected members. I noticed there's a few new elected members this year that haven't seen me before. Look forward to telling you a little bit about the Adelaide Rally and our event and some of our an opportunity that we're presenting today about a Strathalbyn concept for later this year. Some of the elected members here would have seen this last year, and we're presenting some of this again. We may need a little bit more than 5 minutes, and I request through the Mayor that we certainly for questions, there might be a few questions about this that might take a little longer than 5 minutes.
Happy with that, everybody? Yeah, thank you.
So the Adelaide Rally is it's the largest car rally of its type in the Southern Hemisphere. In fact, in the world, we have over 420 cars on a good year running in the event. It's 66% of it is a non-competitive rally. It's a touring road event. And there is a small competitive element, that meaning that there are a number of cars that are timed and awards are given. The event delivers around about $1.8 million of economic benefit to the state. It has around about 15% of the entrants in it from interstate. It's quite a social event which has got big groups, tour groups, attached to brands such as Ferrari and McLaren and Mercedes and BMW and others. And these are just some images of, I suppose, the history of the event. Harks right back until 1997 with the classic Adelaide Rally. And the rally is 4 days. It starts in the city. We're based at Victoria Park, and then it travels through up to 9 different council regions. So we have stages in Mount Barker, City of Adelaide, Campbelltown, Burnside, Mitcham, Tea Tree Gully, Onkaparinga, Adelaide Hills, and some years some others. There's about 135 road closures attached to the event. The event is supported by state government. We have a 4-year agreement with the Malanowska state government supporting the event, and we have multi-year agreements with several council regions, including Adelaide Hills, Mount Barker, and Onkaparinga and Tea Tree Gully. The categories, as I mentioned before, there's some touring elements, and then there's which represents 66% of the event. Here's some imagery of some people taking part in the event. It's all different types of demographics. There's older individuals there, there's younger people, there's people that do it in old classic cars, and then there's some modern exotic cars and things like that. So the rally is an important driver of economic benefit to the state, because people, particularly those from interstate, don't just come in and do the event on the weekend. They actually come in and do what we call reconnaissance prior to the event, where they come in and they check out the route. They write their own notes about what they see along the route. Some of their, I suppose, certainly the competitive crews make notes about what might help them be more competitive or have a smoother run through the event. So they come back to the region and spend days in the area going over and over the roads, at times at normal road speed, of course. So there's a significant number of bed nights that are created, an economic benefit to the state through that. The event, as I mentioned, is it's supported by state government, and we deliver all the road closures with under what we call Section 33 of the Road Traffic Act. So that involves police officers closing all the roads, and then we engage a traffic management company that manage all of those road closures, along with 326 volunteers to run the event. We traditionally would bring the event near the Strathalbyn region, and we would run a stage, what we call Doctors Creek, in between the road in between Strathalbyn and Macclesfield, and we often use Bull Creek Road, which we won't be using this year. We are intending on using 2 sections of road, one being in and around the township that I'll get to in a minute, and then the traditional one in between Macclesfield and Strathalbyn. When we do this town stage, we're hoping to bring about 2,500 people to Strathalbyn. Those people we've measured spend around about $68 a day when they're in the Adelaide Hills, or in that near that lunch stop, I should say. And we think that it could generate about $170,000 of economic benefit to the Strathalbyn district. We believe that by combining with or running an event at the same time that the duck race is running, that we create some critical mass in this space, so that we have more vibrancy, we may have more activity, we have more promotion, and we just generally have more going on, and that the benefits will be greater than the sum of their parts by creating, by bringing those two events together. We think we'll deliver greater benefit to market stall holders, the township itself, some greater exposure. With our event, we bring live stream, we bring media coverage and things like that, and that we will be able to integrate some of what we all love about Strathalbyn, being things like the beautiful gardens, the quaint township and its history with motoring, and with Gilbert's Motor Museum, collectible classics, the Kenny Blake Memorial, things like that. We'll weave all of those things into the media that comes out of our event. So that's pretty straightforward in terms of benefit. The Strathalbyn town stage is something we pitched last year. And for those of you who remember, we did get that voted up, or we were going to go ahead with that. But at that time, the entire sport of tarmac rally was undergoing some rule changes with the national regulator, Motorsport Australia, and we didn't get our approvals to run under a revised rule set until very close to our event. And it just didn't give us enough time to actually plan what we were going to do with the Strathalbyn town stage. But now we've got a lot more certainty, and we've got more time, and it's something that we really like to do. So this town stage that we're proposing would run on the Sunday the 19th of November. It involves some spectator zones in and around the Soldiers Memorial Gardens, the road closure of Sunter Street, I believe it is, and a commercial terrace, probably be for around about 5 hours with some time to set up as well. So maybe some what we call contraflows. We have to install some barriers and other equipment. And we may need to do a small portion of that on the Friday and the Saturday morning before. I'll probably just flick straight to probably the largest map here that you can see, with the yellow line being a road that we would close where we hold all of the cars, like we do annually for this event. We would hold cars there and we would do a lunch stop in the Soldiers Memorial Gardens. And that's a road closure area where people can freely walk through the cars and they can get access to the park and see the duck race and go to all the market stalls and whatnot. But we'll also have about 400 rare and exotic cars there for a period of maybe 3.5, 4 hours in the middle of the day. And there's another section on the map, which is a green section where cars actually go down Catherine Street and then head around to Rankin Street and then back up over the bridge. And you've got several sort of red lines on that map there where we put our water barriers. So this event is highly regulated, as you'd imagine, and there's several procedures we've got to go through to get this approved, and a lot of that relates to installing what we call TL2 rated or specially rated water barriers in certain locations if we're going to have cars driving at an elevated speed and above 50 kilometres an hour in that section there. And the associated road closure that I mentioned before is our traditional Doctors Creek stage, we call it, in between Macclesfield and Strathalbyn. We've already gone to consultation with the residents on that stage in the Mount Barker section and also in the Alexandrina section, and we've had nil feedback, negative or positive, on that, and that's indicative of what we normally see on that stage, given that that section of road has been used for nearly 30 years annually for this event. It's just a couple of images about what these lunch stops look like and what the cars look like at the start of a stage. Some of the spectators from traditional spectator stages in recent years. Now, last year when we brought this to council, we were suggesting that we would like a contribution to costs of some $23,000 that will help cover all of our barrier system installation and our traffic management costs. And that's something that we certainly want to put forward again, that would go a long way to helping us put this part of the event on. So this would be the first proper town stage we've had attached to this event. We have run urban stages at the Adelaide Showgrounds before attached to this event, but this would be the first thing of its type. We've already, certainly last year spoke to the Strathalbyn Tourism Association. We even recently again did a site inspection with the Rotary Club and have the support, I believe, of Gilbert's Motor Museum and other business owners like Collectible Classics. We haven't gone out any further than that at the moment till we see whether we've got some certainty around this, and then we can do some more work on this. So again, this event is run under the sanctioning body being Motorsport Australia. That's the same insurer and regulatory body that regulate supercars and other activities that happen at that Tier 1 level in terms of motorsport in this country. And we think that the location, the heritage and the arterial road detours make Strathalbyn the perfect location for this, because there's good access to get or detours to get around our road closure, but yet at the same time we've got some good spectating locations in the parks nearby. So I'm happy to take some questions.
Any questions from anybody? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Tim. That's really interesting. So just as far as consultation goes, so you're proposing this on the same day as the duck race?
Yes.
And so you have already liaised with the people who run the duck race and the business owners and what have you?
We've liaised with the Rotary Club, yes, and I believe that they've moved the date to actually fit with us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So which we're now talking about the Sunday the 19th of November. Yes.
Any other questions? Councillor Maynard.
Just a comment, just to back that up. I'm a member of the Rotary Club. That's entirely correct. They have moved the date, and we are negotiating with Steam Ranger as well to come down on that day to Strathalbyn. So that will add another dimension to the event.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you for that. And I've heard you before on numerous occasions putting forward your proposals. I've said before, and I'll say it again, my concern is always about road closures, because people pay a lot of money to have access to roads. And I'm glad to see Bulls Creek is now not being used. All I say, just for the public record, that we're absolutely sure that not only health services, but also veterinary services can access the farming properties along the road that you close.
If there is an emergency and the residents receive information saying that if there is an emergency on their property, they can certainly contact us, and if they need access, we can provide emergency access or egress for them. And it sounds bizarre, but it's entirely true that it was 2 years ago we provided emergency egress for someone who had we wouldn't normally do it, but a very sick parrot. Seriously, I'm dead serious. That's extraordinary, but the woman was quite distressed, and it's better that we stopped the event, and then we escorted her out, and she sought some veterinary services for her pet. But we can certainly do that, and we work closely with all emergency services. Obviously, we have SAPOL right there on site. We have an on-site ambulance, and we have what we call MIVs, medical intervention vehicles. We have 3 of those on site. So I'm entirely confident in saying that if someone was suffering a medical episode, we could provide much faster medical support than the standard ambulance service at that time.
Any further questions?
Sorry, just one. So the dollar value that you're looking from council, is that an in-kind contribution, or is that what does that get?
It's entirely for the traffic management and the barrier systems. So we need to bring the rated barrier systems up from Paraka, more than likely, or certainly from the city, and store them up here in Strathalbyn, and then we would put them out on site on the Friday, the Saturday, and then mostly on the Sunday. And when doing that, we wouldn't be closing any roads entirely until the Sunday. So if we did need to install barriers on, I think it's Sunter Street, we could do what's called a contraflow, which we just block out one lane of the road, and then there's a traffic light and people go in one direction and they'll have to wait and go the other way. And the water to fill the barriers is actually fairly costly, because we need to fill them very quickly. It takes a long time to fill the barriers, and we haven't got time to wait on the day. So we need to have 5 trucks ready to fill the barriers.
Any more questions? Thanks, Tim. Thanks very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
So 3.2 is regarding the Goolwa North Code Amendment. So we've got Craig Rowe from CL Rowe and Associates, and Craig is going to give us a deputation regarding what's proposed for Goolwa North. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you, and good afternoon, members. Good to see the familiar faces and the new ones. For the new members, my name is Craig Rowe. I'm a planning consultant, and I've been a resident of Goolwa for about 15 or 16 years. Sorry? Yes, thanks for reminding me. I also would like an extra 5 minutes if I could have it. I think this is quite an important issue.
Everybody okay with that? Nobody? Yep, thank you. Yep.
Thank you very much. Firstly, members, I'd like to advise you that over the last couple of weeks, I've had a number of conversations with Matt Atkinson from the Planning Department. So the Planning Department are very much aware of what I'm about to say. The proposal that's currently before the state government is a code amendment to rezone 241 hectares of farming land at North Goolwa. It's not a lot different to what we talked about back in 2020, 2021. It's a slightly smaller area, but it is a fairly significant development with major impacts upon Goolwa. It is proposed that the rezoning be, or the zoning be a master plan township zone or a neighbourhood zone with a deferred urban area. Depending on the documents that you read from the proponent, there's no concept plan that I can show you. They haven't done one. But from their engineering documentation and their traffic consultant's report, it's apparent that there are 3 scenarios for that area. One is a couple of thousand houses. The second one is about 2,500 houses. And the worst case scenario is 5,500 houses, and they're averaged at about 300 square metre blocks. So we're working on the 2,500 because the Minister for Planning announced that he had released 2,500 allotments. So we're working on that. That's about a density of about 12 or 13 dwellings a hectare. What that will do to Goolwa, it will increase the population of Goolwa by 75%, and it will increase the number of dwellings by about 48%. Reminding members that back in 2020-21, there was the Goolwa North Growth DPA. That was 580 odd hectares, and 200 of that was for residential purposes, with a further 365 hectares for deferred urban. What that did is, again, the numbers were pretty rubbery. We started off thinking there was going to be 1,300 houses out there, and the final documents that were produced by the state government regarding land supply suggested there was 6,000 going to be there. So we were a little bit wary about that. That matter went to public consultation. Council put that out to public consultation, and you'll see that there were 286 submissions, and 662 of those, or 91%, were opposed to it. That was the area that council proposed to rezone, and the area coming up in the yellow, if you can see that, is the area that is the subject of this code amendment report. The land that you'll see to the southwest of that, the orange area, is a deferred urban area. It's been set aside for future growth for probably 40 or 50 years, and I don't particularly have a problem with that. The community should have been expecting that. It's been there for a long time, and that's the land next to the high school. But this other land in yellow is all prime agricultural land. The concerns that were basically presented to council last time from the community, the main one was the loss of the prime agricultural land, and the second one was the likely detrimental impact upon the township character, given that it's a sit-a-slow town. This seemed to be something that was odds with that. The visual impact of the entrance to the town from the north was a very important thing. It was likely to separate the communities within the township, because this proposal out there, like the previous one, it's going to have shops, it's going to have a school at some stage, it's going to have everything they need out there. So those people won't necessarily have to come into Goolwa. There don't have to be any interaction. So it's, and when they talk about a planned township zone, you've got to think that there might be a separate identity sitting out there. It's high housing density. We've got to ask where the employment opportunities are going to be to sustain that increase. I'm not 100% sure there's a proven demand for it. The documents that you see these days from the government says that the Goolwa North growth area will accommodate 68 dwellings a year for the next 16 or 17 years, and it goes on and on. But if those allotments aren't there, those people aren't coming. They'll go somewhere else. Are we creating the demand and enticing people to come? I think, and as the Mayor will suggest a number of times, why do people come here? They don't come to live in suburbia. They come to be by the beach, by the water, to have a rural environment, to be in a township environment. They don't come to be part of what could be very much like Seaford or Mount Barker. We've all seen Mount Barker as you drive in from Wistow. That's pretty close to it. The one important thing that I really want to impress upon the members is this code amendment's irreversible. If this gets approved by the minister, it's done deal, irreversible. Whatever damage comes along over the years, it will be there. It will not go away. So I really want the council to think long and hard about their position in respect to this. The previous decision is interesting, the council made on the 19th of July. It resolved not to proceed with the future development of the North Goolwa area for residential purposes, as promoted by its own DPA. They were aware of what would happen there, so they decided that was inappropriate. The second one was to prepare a comprehensive master plan for Goolwa, a new one, which preserved the character of the area, or took into consideration that. And that master plan had to be approved by council. That vote was 8-1, so it was a substantial decision there. What's happened since then? There's been no master plan review. 2 years. Nothing's happened. 2 years lost, as far as I'm concerned, in this fight. What that gave is it was 2 years that the proponent could put together a fairly strong argument to have that North Goolwa area rezoned, because it was still in accordance with council's concept plan for the area. It should have been taken out of existence immediately and reviewed immediately. So that's caused a problem. And the elected members of council did master plans for other communities when truly it should have focused perhaps on Strathalbyn and Goolwa first, knowing that there was likely to be attempts to rezone rural land. There was a meeting with Future Urban in November 2022. They are the planning consultants for the proponent. My understanding is that nothing's happened within council since that meeting. So that should have raised some red flags back then. That didn't occur. So the lack of action by council has enabled Ambo Proprietary Limited, who are the proponents, to get their code amendment to the minister and to argue that it's strictly in accordance with what council has set up for this area, albeit something that was rejected in 2021. The code amendment's not a fait accompli. Regardless of what anybody says, it's not a fait accompli. The minister will sit in and approve that or refuse that as he sees fit at the end of a fairly extensive process. The minister has advised, I'm aware, I was at the meeting, Mayor Parks, that the council should be looking at reviewing strategic plans for the area. We were told not to come with bits and pieces, come with a holistic plan and show where future development, where council wants future development, future expansion. Don't come there with a piecemeal situation and hope that we can fill in some gaps over a period of time. You won't be able to see that, but that's the letter from the minister to Future Urban. And what it says on the bottom is that I will make the decision on whether to approve or propose amendments at the completion of the code amendment process. So that's 60 to 68 weeks, excuse me. Proposed course of action. I implore council to maintain its opposition to North Goolwa. Don't go into any future discussions with the mindset that we're not doing anything at North Goolwa, but think about the scale, if anything, about North Goolwa. And I'm going to suggest to you that perhaps North Goolwa should be, if there's going to be change, that North Goolwa should be, or parts of North Goolwa should be zoned deferred urban for something future. We've got 10 or 15 or 20 years land available here. We don't need North Goolwa now, but don't dismiss it. There are alternatives. The minister said 2,500 houses. We can find 2,500 of properties easily with what we've got on the ground at the moment. I'm begging council to immediately prepare a new concept plan, and I've seen the report by the planners, which basically backs that up, so I won't go any further. Please give that due consideration. You need to do it urgently. You need to advise the minister that you're doing it and what you're looking at, because there's the Greater Adelaide Plan Review coming up in the latter part of this year, and that is the perfect opportunity to present your case to the minister, but you've only got months to do all this work. Potential urban development. What I'm showing, I'll just skip through this. I'm going to go into some slides. These are the 9 areas that I think that council should focus on. Strathalbyn, I didn't fit in there, but that's one of them. And these are all been discussed before. The first one is the deferred area, Kessel Road and Skews Road. It's about 50 odd hectares of land there. It's been sitting there with either a deferred urban or a rural fringe zoning, which was the old deferred urban zoning, for probably 40 odd or 50 years. I went back to 1980 and it was rural fringe, and it was being set aside then for future urban development. Skews Road and Kessel Road have got water, power and CWMS. It's ready-made for residential development. There's some low-lying land that can't be used. There's some land that Sea Change are going to develop, and and I understand that council's probably looking for some employment land. Perfect opportunity. It's within walking distance of shops. It's within the township boundary. It's ready-made. Why would we overlook 53 hectares that could effectively or likely produce 400 houses in the township? Why would we overlook that and go and rezone some land? Next one is the Glendale Drive land, north of the school. Again, it's been deferred urban or around about that zoning for well over 40 years. It's 20 odd hectares. It can realise two or 300 houses. And we've had that land set aside for all that time. Let's use it. This is North Goolwa, this land zone, neighbourhood zone. I just picked these properties out. I just drove around and picked them out. I think there's about 9 or 10. They're the larger allotments. They are about 23 hectares. If we do the standard 12 allotments or 10 allotments a hectare, there's a significant number there. That doesn't include all the smaller blocks that could have reasonable size allotments, 800 square metres, 1,000 square metres carved off of them for other houses. So there's ample land out there that could accommodate hundreds of new allotments. And there's already 80 allotments approved out there that are under construction that haven't come into consideration. Hindmarsh Island West, there's 400 plus existing at the Coorong Keys. The waterfront neighbourhood zone, which is the top northwestern corner, there's development happening there. There's about 180 potential allotments in there. I'm not going to talk about the rural neighbourhood zone or the rural living zone at the end of there. Collectively, you could fit 1,200 square metre blocks in there. Now, 1,200 square metres is the minimum lot size in a residential area for allotments that aren't connected to the CWMS. So I'm not making these numbers up. I'm just taking the existing standards and applying them to what could occur in these developments. So there's potentially, 1,800 allotments there, but certainly 600. This is what I call Goolwa North, or the Traeger land. It's Traeger's plus 3 other properties. This land was zoned rural fringe from 1980 through to 2014. The members that have been here listening to me bang on about that land for 10 years know all about it. Collectively, that land usable is about 75 hectares. Again, we're only talking or suggesting that council consider 1,200 square metres, nothing less than that. And there's about 450 blocks there. Deferred urban Middleton, the part south of the main road, which is already the subject of a code amendment, 1,200 square metre allotments, 9 hectares of it. There's about 52 blocks in there. We're suggesting that the same happen across the road, 1,200 square metre blocks, big blocks able to be connected to their own aerobic systems or waste systems would be quite attractive. Another 70 odd blocks there. Deferred urban zone again at Port Elliot, it's the showgrounds. I'm saying that this is pretty unlikely, but it's within the township. I think that probably 100 allotments there, but maybe if it was all redeveloped and the showgrounds were developed somewhere else, you'd get 200 or 300 blocks out of that. The rural living area at Clayton, Council supported the rezoning of this land in 2014. It was rural living. The minimum allotment size for this land is 7 hectares. It's right next to the swimming pool, the proposed health precinct and the Beyond estate. And yet the owners of these land have to have 7 hectare allotments. Again, we're proposing that this land be changed so that the allotment sizes are simply 1,200 square metres. Suggesting that, that's another 280. Hills Neighbourhood Zone in Strathalbyn, there's about, my reckoning, about 40 hectares there that haven't been developed. It can't all be developed. And there's varying size allotments, 500 to 1,000 and 2,000. So there's somewhere between 250 and 300 blocks there. And there's other opportunities at Strath that can be included. So the urban expansion options that I presented, there's well over 3,000 allotments there. And that doesn't include the extra allotments that I threw in on High Marsh Island. I know that members don't like me saying that, but there's plenty of scope. This is just stuff that was picked up within a matter of hours, and it's for me, members, it's a matter of going back to what we talked about several years ago. The community spoke. They wanted the township character protected, and the members listened. And we're simply asking here today that the members listen. Do a review of the for Goolwa Township. Do a concept plan for Goolwa. But you're going to have to do it within the next couple of months. You can't wait. We haven't got the luxury of that time. Do a holistic plan for the council. Present those documents to the minister as a viable alternative to this concept plan at North Goolwa. And if it doesn't work, there's a couple of other options available to you. I'll be so bold to suggest that the North Goolwa proposal requires an infrastructure agreement with council. Council doesn't have to sign an infrastructure agreement if it doesn't want to. The other alternative, the council could do its own code amendment in opposition to it. So members, there's a lot to think about. I thank you for the opportunity. I'm happy to answer as many questions as you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions? Councillor Coomans.
Thanks, Craig, for your professional presentation. You obviously have a lot of knowledge in this area. What blows my mind a little bit is a letter that we received from the state government that said 83 lots are development ready, 280 almost ready, and High Marsh Island provides some 450. Yet what you're presenting is an alternative to all of that of over 3,000 allotments. So where did they get it wrong?
I don't think they have. By what they're saying is they're ready. Well, they're on the ground. I mean, there's 262 vacant allotments. Back on the 10th of May, I made a phone call to Council's rate section, and they told me there were 262 existing vacant allotments in Goolwa ready for development. So there's 262. If you look at the systems, the government systems, you'll see the approved land divisions, and there were about 80 blocks being put on the ground at that time. So there's 300 odd to start off with. Since then, there's been a number of other land divisions. I've got one at New Orleans. There's 13 there. They don't factor in the deferred urbans. They're not ready. They're not ready to walk in and build a house on today. You're going to have to rezone them from deferred urban to neighbourhood, and then that brings on that 400 or 500. So what they're saying is today you can walk in and there's blocks available. What I'm saying is there are potential for 3,000 easy before you go to North Goolwa. So do what we've done here. Nothing that council hasn't supported for 40 odd years. There's nothing that I presented that's new. I'm not saying let's pluck land out and rezone it. I'm saying let's just go back to where we were for good reasons over the past 40 years and use the land that's available to us now.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Craig. That's really interesting. I just wonder, when you talk about the lots that are already within the township, that would be up to the owners who own that land to make a decision on whether they develop it or not. Is that the challenge? Is that why perhaps the state government is looking for big parcels that they can just make a decision and then they can be developed? Is that perhaps the reason why?
Look, I think the history of zoning in this area, especially in the north of Goolwa, the areas out there, I think Matt touched on it. Was it Tuesday night, Matt? Your thing. when there were provisions that said that you couldn't do any redevelopment or redivisions of land out at North Goolwa, for example, unless you had 4 hectares. Now, the blocks out there, the big blocks, are generally about a hectare each, which meant somebody had to come along and convince at least 3 owners to sell up before you could do anything. Now, that's changed to a certain degree, and they don't have to do that. So that's made it easier for properties to be redeveloped now in the existing areas at North Goolwa. With respect to what the Minister did in terms of this proposal, you know, there is a housing crisis, there is a demand. This was an opportunity for the Minister to say, well, look, here's somebody coming telling us they've got 2,500 houses, an opportunity, bang, we'll pick it up. It was in the council's previous concept plan, as I said, which was rejected in 2021. So it made it easy for the Minister to say, here's a big parcel of land that we can stick houses on.
Any further? Councillor Maiden.
Yeah, I presume, Craig, you had a look at the admin report at 8.1 coming up later on in the meeting. Is there anything that you might like to add to that? It says here, we prepare a revised concept plan and comprehensive master plan. And I get the message that we should be doing this as quickly as possible. So is there anything from that particular recommendation that you would like to talk to?
Look, I certainly endorse the recommendation. It's a must, and it's very much in keeping with what I've been saying. I would like to see a time frame in there. We can't allow it to happen. You know, can't allow it to be delayed. It needs to be done very quickly. It needs to be done in conjunction with the stakeholders. I'm not going to agree with all the statements that were in that document. I have some differing views, and I'm a little annoyed at some of the statements that were contained in that document, and it's probably not the forum for me to voice my opinion. But needless to say, I think it's a step in the right direction. I just think there needs to be an emphasis on what it should contain, and I certainly believe, members, that we should look at all the options. My opinion is that we should leave North Goolwa last. That should be the last option, I believe, that we look at. And if it's required, then there can be some level or scale of development out there. But I don't think that's needed for 15 or more years. So I would be suggesting that if you take it on board, I'd be asking the planning department to look at every option that's available and existing to them before they start using productive agricultural land. Every strategy in this state in a planning document speaks against the fragmentation or loss of productive agricultural land. Despite whether that's in the urban expansion area or the EFPA, it is prime agricultural land, needs to be preserved. Thank you.
Any further? Councillor Scott, quick one.
I don't know whether it's development by stealth or just it's a form of bullying tactics, really, that we have someone from outside of the area saying this is what's going to happen. We've done the village conversations, and the people say that they don't want the character of this area changed. And I go back to Middleton and the contribution that Middleton has made to the development of this area, with the whole of the sandhills from Middleton virtually through to Tokamo Reserve taken up with housing, which would never be allowed now. But they want more. And it is just an absolute furphy saying don't go for the food production area, because wherever you look, they're using food production area. You come down through Roseworthy and there's a barley crop, and in the middle of the barley crop is a subdivision all manicured out the middle of nowhere. They've taken all the carrot patches up, or a lot of them, up on the north side of Adelaide, prime market garden area. No, it's all going under houses. Some of them pretty mindlessly designed too, I might add. And this lovely area down here that, if you think of it about for half a minute, one thing is to plonk houses down here. The next thing is how you're going to, where are they going to work? And B, how they're going to travel backwards and forwards to Adelaide. Now, we've got roads in very poor condition between here and there. And what people seem to overlook is that if they go through Wistow, Mount Barker, which in itself is something else again, they finish up down at the toll gate. Now, you know, you can't have just selective planning, surely.
Councillor Scott, we don't need a lecture on the planning and how to get to Adelaide. We need a question, please.
Well, how do we actually, how is it really feasibly possible to stop this ongoing bracket creep that we have of people gradually by stealth, or I say by stealth in inverted commas, developing each of our towns without a proper growth plan and spoiling the character of our district?
Any further questions? So, Craig, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Time.
Much appreciated. Cheers.
Item 4 is petitions. There are none. Item 5 is questions with notice. 5.1 is a question from Councillor Coomans regarding the cutting at Port Elliot. 5.2 is a question from Councillor Miller regarding mandatory and discretionary rebates and discounts on rates. 5.3 is a question from Councillor Miller regarding the rate in the dollar comparison to previous years and rate capping. 5.4 is a question from Councillor Miller regarding the percentage allowed for growth when calculating rate in the dollar. 5.5 is a question from Councillor Miller regarding a Keoride Trail, community, public and freight transport corridor advocacy in the North Ward. And 5.6 is a question from Councillor Miller regarding the Langhorne Creek Red Trail project, the status update and grant funding readiness. And the answers to all those questions are in your agenda. Item 6 is questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? Councillor Scott.
Yes, my question is in relation to tree removal at Hampton Estate. Some very substantial trees, it appears to me, are being removed. Are they consistent with any application to remove trees? Or is one question, or have there been more trees removed than were actually expected to be removed? And if that is the case, what steps will the council take to remedy the situation? Because some fairly substantial trees have been removed.
Matt will answer that for us. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Through the chair. There was a tree removal plan that was provided as part of the land division application for the Adelaide Road land. Most of the native vegetation, the significant sized native vegetation, was either within the creek corridor, or there was one or two allotments where it was in an appropriate location to be retained. The majority of the vegetation that's been removed was non-native vegetation that was smaller. But we've been keeping an eye on that development, and I'm pretty confident to say that the trees that have been removed were approved to be removed.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Miller.
Just on community consultation on the draft annual business plan and budget, when we get feedback from the community, will they be responded to en masse or just acknowledged, and then we respond to that during the briefing? And
through the chair, we'll respond to questions which have been asked by individuals, but we'll also summarise what the feedback is. If there's specific questions, we'll also include that in the feedback that is presented to council, so that you've got a full overview of what was raised and what the correct answers are.
Any further questions? No, so we move on to item 7, which is notice of motions. We have a notice of motion from Councillor 7.1 from Councillor Coomans regarding the Victor Harbour Road, Hindmarsh Valley, moved by Councillor Coomans. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Parks. Yeah, I do like to speak to it. Unfortunately, there was a meeting on the 18th of April that was attended by about 150 people from from our council area and also from the Victor Harbour area. And it was pretty clear from Councillor Scott actually attended that, and I understand he made a very good presentation. But it was pretty clear from the meeting that the location of the passing lanes that they're proposing isn't right. And I guess I've got two reasons why I couldn't support overtaking lanes there. One is it's actually on a downward slope. And if we know our usual drivers, whenever there's a downward slope, you invariably speed up. So anyone who's going to be passing will be exceeding the speed limit. And the other more environmental issue is that there is a large number of trees planted along the side of that road where they're proposing to put those passing lanes. And those trees are very important and they shouldn't be removed. So that were the two reasons that I thought. They did come up with three options. One was on another section of bendy part of the road, which is also a downward slope, which I don't think is appropriate. The second one is what their preferred one that I was just talking about. And the third one is probably almost acceptable. It's much closer to Victor Harbour. But, in terms of spending money on this, there are already a number of passing lanes on the Victor Harbour Road between Compass and Victor Harbour. Yet we've got Goolwa Road, about 16 kilometres from the Victor Harbour Road to Alexandrina Road, has got no passing lanes at all. And the traffic on that is about half of what travels on the Victor Harbour Road to Victor Harbour from that location. So I would have thought there'd be more of a priority to do something about the Goolwa Road, which was promised some 4 years ago during an election period that would happen. That it's about time that's where they focused rather than another passing lane in an area that's just not going to work. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Scott, seconding it.
I'd like to make it a alteration with the permission of the mover, if I may.
Well, let's hear it.
So I was happy to second it, but I'd like to make it an alteration if that's possible. Otherwise, someone else may wish to second it, and I'll make the alteration afterwards.
Well, we're going to guess what it's going to be. I don't know. You haven't told us what the alteration is going to be yet.
No, the addition is that where it says accident-prone areas of the intersections of Hindmarsh Valley and make it and Virgin Road, and much needed upgrade to Goolwa Road, the Goolwa Mount Compass Road, including a slow vehicle turnout. I'm being definitive there because there isn't a specific area on the Mount Compass Goolwa Road that has had a whole lot of accidents, crashes, like the Hindmarsh Valley Virgin Road corner has. So I just want to, and that's been the message that we've been putting forward, is upgrading the Mount Compass Goolwa Road with a slow lane turnout or slow vehicle turnout. And I just think that would, if the mover is happy with that, I think that would be more definitive and would reinforce the message that we've been putting forward consistently all the way through.
You okay with that? Yep. So is there any further discussion? There's no further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 8 is administration reports. 8.1 is the Goolwa North growth area, which is what Craig, there was a deputation on. There's a recommendation there with 3 dot points. Is there somebody that wishes to move that? Councillor Maidment. Certainly, yep.
Yeah, we've heard Craig Rose deliberations on Goolwa North. In the previous chamber, I was party to the discussions for a very long time around why we should knock back that DPA at that particular time, I think back in 2021. And as I asked the question of Craig, was he happy with this particular recommendation? And he said yes, providing we could make sure that it gets done in a very short time frame because of the Minister's request. Otherwise, the Minister would be deliberating on our behalf. So somewhere in there at 3, could we put a time frame in there?
Put a time frame, Matt? Yeah, well, Matt's coming.
Oh, yeah, I'd like to...
the only thing I would suggest here, I would personally like to see, based on community input, is on 2, take the Goolwa North reference out of it.
Yeah.
We're not talking about a plan for Goolwa North, we're talking about a plan for Goolwa.
Yes, absolutely.
Through the chair, in relation to the timeframes, when Nigel and I went and met with the representatives of the Minister's office, there was definitely an emphasis on this occurring relatively quickly, given that there's a couple of existing code amendments in the system. But I'm also mindful that this process and being able to do justice to it and being able to consult with the entire community about all of the different options is going to take a little bit of time. So if there was a time put on it, I'd suggest perhaps the end of this year, with a view to getting it early next year. We understand will be the consultation on the next regional plan for sort of go 2030. We'll be endeavouring to get this piece of work done as quickly as we possibly can, but I think the reality is for this body of work, probably 6 months is a reasonable time frame.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Coomans, sorry. Talk to it, yeah.
Yeah, if I can speak. I'm just a little bit disappointed in that we made some fairly strong decisions in the last term of council about the Goolwa North proposal, and I think council were pretty strong when it said it did not want to progress that any further. But it seems that the original recommendation had it up the top, and I think the suggestion that yes, by all means we'll look at it, but it needs to be looked at after we've looked at all these other things first. And when Mr. Rose raised something like 3,100 allotments that are there ready to be developed, that's where our focus really should be, and before even considering the Goolwa North. So I think the recommendation has now been changed. It's all of Goolwa rather than Goolwa North. Yep. And we've got a time frame in there that was also suggested by the end of this year. So I'm happy to second it on that basis.
Thank you, Worship. This is really serious planning for the future of what our children and our grandchildren's world will look like down here on the Fleurieu. Just a couple of observations. We can't really advocate for housing affordability, which we're doing on page 84. And page 88 has some very telling information in that letter, and then not offer or be part of the solution. We have what everyone wants. We have lifestyle, amenity, proximity, the ability to influence and inform. I commend staff for taking this initiative. I don't think $70,000 is much to have a seat at the table. It's an opportunity to show how community, local government and state can work together, and I hope that this does give us a seat at the table and we can be proactive and not reactive, but ultimately the Minister will make this decision. And as from what I can gather from the deputation is that time is of the essence, and I just would like some clarification around the 6 months. So the Minister, is he expecting us to come back with a concept plan within a particular time frame? Because we can't not be part of the discussion, I think, if he's giving us this opportunity to influence the future, because people will come and we'll be under enormous pressure if we don't be proactive, I think.
Any further discussion? Oh, sorry, Matt. Sorry.
Through the chair. We weren't provided a deadline, so to speak, on the timelines, other than to say that it is urgent and that they can't hold off on the privately led code amendments forever. But there did seem to be an appetite that if we were proactive and able to push forward with these amended concept plans, that they would be able to delay it sufficiently to be able to have some input from that plan.
Councillor Livingston.
Just a question. If that is the case, would it be important then to include a recommendation in there, or part of one of the recommendations that we advise the minister of our intention to do this so that they don't proceed on the basis that we're waiting 6 months for it. And in the event that the minister does come back and say that it's a 4-month job, then it needs to be marked as urgent. If that
Absolutely. It's important that we write to the minister immediately we've got a resolution and let him know what we're doing.
yeah, and if the minister comes back and says that it needs to be completed more urgently, that is dealt with.
In the meeting I had with the minister, he was very clear that get this plan to me and let me see what you're talking about. Let's put it on the table so I can consider it. So he's well aware of it. There's number 4. Councillor Maiden and Councillor Coomans happy with number 4 added to it. Any further discussion? Councillor Scott.
I'm just wondering whether if we will perhaps lose some of our traction if we tend to say no. The main problem with coming into Goolwa and that Goolwa North plan was it being right in your face, running nearly up to the S-bend. But as you drive in, there's a row of trees that runs out at an angle like that. What happens beyond that? We can't see. And I'm wondering, my question is, are we better off saying, look, we'll concede to letting that happen, but we don't want the character of the entrance to the town changed. So we're sort of meeting them part of the way rather than saying, no, you do it our way or no way. Is that a possibility? I think, do you know where I mean? That line as you come in, you can see a distant line of trees and it's all sort of beyond Washington Street out north sort of thing.
Yeah. Through the chair, I do know exactly where you're talking about, and everything's possible, but what I would recommend is that we'd really like to go to the community with a clean slate and say, here's Goolwa, here's the whole area, where do you think growth is most appropriate? So that when we do come back, we can inform the chamber about what the community feels is appropriate for growth within the township. Some of that might be retrofitting the existing township, as Mr. Rowe sort of suggested. There might be other parcels of land, but I'd really not like to sort of preempt it by saying that this is where we think growth should be. I'd really like to hear from the community about where they think growth should occur.
Sorry, no further discussion. So, yep. So, following on from what Matt said in our discussion with the minister, it's important that we were told in 2021 we made a resolution to get on with this, and we haven't done it. So we need to get on with it. The minister, I can tell you, having spent some time with him, isn't interested in bargains. He's interested in facts on the table. So we have to show the minister a concise, accurate plan, like Craig mentioned, exactly what's available, what we've got now, not do as a deal and give you half of it and do something else somewhere else. That's not the answer. We've got to do it right. And we can do it right and show him that the land's there, because it's there. All you got to do is drive down Fenchurch Street to the end and turn left. And you think, my God, what are they talking about? There's so much land there. And, tons of land. A lot of those people down in that Goolwa North area where those big blocks down Washington Street, they go for 2 streets. There's one house. A lot of them have got 3/4 of the blocks just junk. They would love to be able to sell off half of it or maybe make it into 3 blocks, and they'd still have, over 1,200 square metre blocks. So it's all there. It's just, it's rural living land, and the minister doesn't want rural living, so we're helping him out. We're getting rid of some of it for him. So I'll put the recommendation to you. All those in favour? Against? Against? Anybody against it? No, not we. It's carried unanimously. 8.2 is affordable housing. This is the council's submission to the minister and next steps, and there's a recommendation there before you. Is there a mover for that? Anybody? Councillor Miller? Seconder, Councillor Maidment. Any discussion? Straightforward? No. Councillor Miller.
Sorry, Worship. affordable housing is pretty much state and federal policy setting. It's influenced a lot by that. 8.1, the item we just considered, is an example of how we can influence and inform. I think it's a very informative submission to help us understand our community and is timely, and we are deliberating the budget. So I just want to say thank you to the staff for doing this. Sewer and swims provision is a reality, and I appreciate the briefing a couple of months ago, and I'm interested to learn more about co-housing for ageing well, and I think we've demonstrated our commitment to whatever we can do to help with this situation. So I commend the report. Thank you.
Any further? No, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. So 8.3 is the Goolwa Oval Management Model, and there's a number of recommendations there before you. Before we get into this or move it or anything else, having been in, I want to try and save some time and debate and a lot of trouble. Having been involved with the Oval and the committee, probably 10 years on the Oval Committee, and more than 12 years involved with the Oval and the sporting groups down there, and the amount of time we've spent on this and the situation we're in and the background. What I recommend to you we should do to get the best outcome is that you should adopt recommendation 1 and get rid of the section 41 committees. You should get rid of option 2, 3 and 4 and go back and establish an advisory group on 5. Now that advisory group should include, apart from the sporting groups, it should include a couple of members of the community who are not involved in sport, because we've got a lot of people out there living in our council area who have retired, who are still young, fit, active, well-educated business people who are retired, looking for something to do. And we might pick up a couple of good people that want to get on that committee and help from the management perspective of the actual management operation of it and running it, rather than actually worrying about the individual sports. The Oval Committee used to work very, very well for years, and we're going through a difficult time at the moment with a lot of concerns about costs and what's going on and where it's going to go. And I think getting this together and then getting some community involvement as well will make a big difference. That advisory group can then work together to prepare to bring to council a proposal on how the facility should be run and the costs achieved and covered in some way or another, because it used to get covered before, and it should, when it's finished, it should be a cheaper facility to run. But we need to get that information. We don't know all that information yet. But that's my recommendation to you. It just gives us a bit of time. But I probably don't normally speak to things before you vote on them, but I just trying to sort of save hours of talking about fees on lights and things like that. Councillor Livingston.
I'm happy to move number 1 and number 5 and not 2, 3 and 4. With the amendment to recommendation 5 that an advisory group to be initially chaired by the Mayor and with representation from 2 members from each club and a minimum of 2 community members be established. May I speak to it? Yep. I think it's clear to everyone that the community clubs, the clubs are not happy with the recommendations that we have put forward tonight and considered at the last meeting. One of the major things that has happened is that we've invested a lot of money into this facility, and I truly do believe that the best outcome of this is that the clubs are fully involved in the management of the facility. They know the facility better than any of us here. They will know what works. They're in the facility day in, day out, and for them to be truly recognised, they should be part of the decision making from the get-go, not after we make decisions as to the fees, as to the lighting costs, and then hand over the reins to them. So I would urge everyone in the chamber to support number 1 and number 5 only at this stage.
Is there a second to that? Councillor Oliver, I think you wish to speak to it or not?
I can only agree that I don't think we should be running it directly. It should be a community-based model, and I think the best path forward is, as the Mayor suggested, reflected with Millie's comments. Thank you.
Is any Councillor Coomans?
Thanks, Mayor Parks. Yeah, look, I do support this. I'm just thinking in terms of some independent members, and I've banged on about this before, that users of that precinct include the Lions Club and also include the bowling club. And I would have suggested they have a stake in all of this, and they probably have a level of independence as well. So I would probably suggest that each of those be invited to be part of the advisory group.
So the Lions Club and the Bowls should be part of that advisory group. They always were, and the reason they're part of it, not because they have an input into what the other sporting groups are doing. It's just that everybody involved with the precinct knows what's going on. So,
just a question then: is that part of what is recommended here, that those two groups be invited to be part of the advisory group?
I think we got to prepare a terms of reference so it could be part of that. Yeah. So, Councillor Gardner.
I'm quite relieved that we've got 1 and 5 now, because I was feeling very concerned. The sporting clubs in this district are very, very important. They support our youth and older people as well, and they certainly need to have a voice in and a major say in what actually is happening. So yeah, I'm very happy to support 1 and 5.
Any further discussion? Councillor Maidman.
Just a question first, and I'll make a statement after. Is there a time limit on this? Because already for the last 2 years, council have been pouring money into this facility, and without any money coming back the other way due to the running of this place. So is this for 12 months? Is it for 2 years, or are we going to put a time limit on it?
As soon as possible. It's
got
to be sorted out.
It's got to be good. Yeah.
For a year.
Well, can I just say that there's a lot of people watching this, and I was never, and if anyone knows me, I'm not a fan of Section 41 committees anyway, and council meddling in sport. So I think that what's recommended here, 1 and 5, is a good outcome, given that we have heard from the user groups that they're dissatisfied at the moment. If this were to get up with the various costs, the fees structure, I should say. So happy to support this. Thanks.
Councillor Miller.
I'm a little bit disappointed that we're not dealing with these one at a time. I'm happy to remove the Section 41 committee, but I would have preferred we dealt with recommendation 1, then we dealt with recommendation 5. I'm foreshadowing that when we've dealt with this item, that I will be moving recommendation 2, and I will be speaking to the reasons why I want to move that. But I think we need a line in the sand here. This has been going on since before a sod was turned on this site or the renovation started. We've got a broader responsibility to the ratepayers of Alexandrina Council. If we want to have a conversation, and I think I'll save it for my next point, about equality and equity, we're in effect a sponsor of the Goolwa, of the 6 user groups that are here. We make by not recovering costs or charging users and now going to an advisory panel to have another discussion when we've been discussing this, as I understand it, since February 2021. I think we need to be decisive and take a stand and give them we're managing the facility now. we need to make a decision, establish the terms of reference, here's what the user fees are going to be, and then go back to the advisory group and have them document and explain why they're not appropriate. I'm open to listening to why those fees aren't appropriate, but at the moment it feels like, and this is not a pun, the goalpost keeps shifting. I thought they'd agreed on what was to be would be in the fees and charges. So I think we need to start to make decisions. It's our facility. It's a regional facility. We've been given a lot of money to make this facility work. And what if they can't agree? We'll just go round and round in circles. So I won't be supporting this only because the two recommendations are together. I want the Section 41 committee gone so that it stops all the confusion around it. But and I'm happy for the advisory panel too, but I am foreshadowing that I will be dealing with the other two recommendations as well.
We'll get to what you want to foreshadow when we get to it, but I won't be accepting a motion from the floor, I can tell you now. Is there any further discussion? If not, Councillor Livingston, do you wish to close the debate, or are you happy with what you've said?
I'm happy with what I said. The only question I have, and you can advise that I can't raise this if I can't, because I have already spoken, is I do take Councillor Miller's point in relation to the timeline. Would it be possible to add a timeline for the establishment of the advisory group, or at least to endorse you, Mayor, writing to each club with the outcome of tonight's meeting?
No, Nigel will speak, but the time is straight away. Let's get on with it and get it done. There's no delays. Let's get together, start having meetings. But Nigel can speak. Yeah,
I'm happy with that then.
Through the chair, what this motion relies upon is the advisory group assisting with the terms of reference. So you can tell administration to get onto it immediately, but we also need the advisory group to do a lot of work and bring back information to council as well. Yeah.
So that closes the discussion. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Against? That's carried. So 8.4.
Excuse me, Your Worship. I'm foreshadowed that
No, you can foreshadow a motion which will come into effect if a motion is lost. The motion was not lost, it was carried. I'm not taking a motion from the floor. If you wish to move a notice of motion regarding the item on 2, you can put it to the next council meeting for consideration.
Point of order, I'd like some advice from the CEO. We have 2 recommendations from the administration as part of this report that we haven't dealt with.
We've had a resolution of council to deal with 1 and 5, and we've dealt with them. That's it.
I can move a motion, can't I, at any time? And you're refusing to accept
this? You
this?
can move a motion at any time, and I can decline to accept it and ask you to bring it to the next meeting of council with a full explanation. Comment, sir?
Through the chair, the Mayor opened up item 8.3 for the Oval management. The recommendation had 5 motions in it. Councillor Livingston did a deliberate action of saying she only wanted to move 1 and 5 for that item. 1 and 5 was voted upon and passed. The Mayor is considering that 8.3 is done and he's moving on to 8.4.
So we move on to 8.4, which is the application for memorial seat for Mr. Ken Preiss, and there's a recommendation there with 4 dot points. Is there anybody wish to move that? Councillor Scott, do you wish to speak to it?
Just briefly, Your Worship, I read the accompanying documentation, and it's interesting some of the comments made there are very relevant to today about the infill of the coastal area. But he obviously had an ongoing and important role in securing and drawing attention to the importance of the Ratalang area, and therefore it's quite fitting that I think that there is a memorial seat to him at a suitably positioned adjacent to the area.
Do we have a second, Councillor Coomans?
Yeah, just a couple of words, Mayor Parks. There was no support for a seat in the Ratalang Basham Beach Conservation Park, but certainly there's support for a seat like this, and there is additional seating required in Port Elliot. So, and Ken Preiss does meet all of the criteria for a memorial seat, and the family's going to pay for it. So, I'm very happy to support this.
Is there any further discussion? Not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 8.5 is council member appointments to external committees. We can do them 1 and 2, or we can just work out who's going on 1 and who's going on 2 and vote on it all at once. Whichever way you'd like to do it. I think it's just as easy to get the nominations first, and then we can vote and move it and vote it. But, so I guess the first question is there anybody that would like to put their hand up to go on the Terram and Mine Consultative Committee? Councillor Miller, do you wish to?
I have a question, Your Worship. I would like to deal with these as 2 separate recommendations, please, so that we can speak to both of them. Thank you.
Of course you can. So do you want to move recommendation 1, or who's going to nominate for it?
I move that we don't appoint anyone to recommendation to this Terram. That's what I'm moving.
So you're moving that we don't. So is there a seconder that we don't? Councillor Maidment. Is there any discussion that we don't? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. So we go to 2, which is a council appoint somebody as a council liaison to the Friends of the Oscar W for the duration of the current term of council. Councillor Livingston, did you wish to nominate for it?
I was going to nominate Councillor Coomans.
Anybody else wish to nominate for it? Councillor Miller?
I just have a question, Your Worship. If I may ask a question. I note, what if we don't appoint anyone? What's the consequence of not appointing anyone? Is there anything preventing the Deputy Mayor from being the liaison person? I'm just not clear why we need a decision of council for someone to be a liaison with Oscar W.
I think to tell the Oscar W friends that we're not going to put anybody on their committee would be a slap in the face. They're volunteers. I mean, I spent years on there, and so did Councillor Davis. I don't see any problem with, I mean, I'd be happy to go on as a consultative on that, be part of that committee. There's no problem with that either. I mean, it's just bringing information back so that it gives information to you all of what's going on. It's an important role that we've always had and supportive, and it gives them that feeling that we do care about them. So I think it's, you want to speak? Yeah.
If I could just make a comment, yeah, look, they emailed me and asked whether I was prepared to be the liaison, and liaison really is trying to improve the working relationships between the Oscar W and council. There have been a few issues in the past, and I'd certainly be happy to do that. But I suggested to them, right, just email me and I say yes. Why not formalise it through council? That council actually makes that decision. So that's why it's come through council for council to make that decision. But I'm happy to do that. And let me say, it's not, you know, there may be instances where I disagree with it, and I'll tell them so. And there are other times when I'll try and work with them, and I'll keep council informed or provide information as necessary so that we can build the relationship as strongly as we can.
That's good. Is there anybody else wish to nominate, just in case we don't give everybody a chance? No. Anybody wants to talk about it at all? Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Worship. I don't have an issue with there being a liaison officer appointed. I just didn't understand why we needed a resolution of council to do it. they've consumed a lot of council time and resources. So if having a liaison helps mitigate that, I'm very supportive. And I did email some questions through earlier that have been responded to. Paragraphs 4 and 5 on page 68 probably apply equally to this one. I understand, I just want to say that they're welcome to talk to any of us about any issues. And I'm interested to know, are there meetings open to the public, and would it be appropriate that we all just get advised when there's a meeting on and we can observe? Because, I'm keen to understand more about the Oscar and how it works. And, I'm looking for a positive and professional approach to this matter too.
The Oscar W meetings are not closed to the community, so committee members can go along. I'm sure they'd be delighted if another elected member or members were to turn up and show an interest in what's taking place. But yeah, you wouldn't be able to participate in anything any decisions. But it's good to be there to get to know, to show them. The more we support them, our volunteers and groups like that, the better. Is there any further discussion? Okay, so I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 8.6 is the Alexandrina Grants Program 2023-24, and there are 7 recommendations. So I guess I'll go through them one at a time and see if we can get, rather than jump around all over the place. Let's go through the appointments, the panels, and of the different groups, and see who we've got that wants to be nominated or wants to be nominated for them. So do we have anybody that wants to? Sorry? Oh yeah. So we'll do first recommendation 1 and endorse the process, and then we'll look at the individual panels. So is there a mover that we endorse the process? Councillor Coomans. Seconder, Councillor Oliver. Any discussion on the process? Councillor Miller.
I've just got a question. Do we need council members on these panels? I mean, there's only 9 of us, and this is, if there's criteria and people make submissions and they meet the criteria, then can't that assessment come to us for a decision?
Through the chair, I believe that the panels have got criteria that says an elected member could be on, but if you don't put someone on, we'll just proceed without. So, yes.
Councillor Gardner.
Could I just ask, are they using Smarty grants? Because I have actually been on the grant process before, and you don't actually have a meeting. You go onto your computer, onto the program, and you do it at home in your own time. That's my understanding.
I'm getting nods, head noddings advising yes, we're using Smarty grants. So we are using Smarty grants. Yep. So is any further discussion on recommendation 1? So I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. So now we go to we'll go through the individual panels. So what happens? And if I get it wrong, Linda, tell me. But people put their applications in through Smarty grants. It goes to our executive team that look after the grants. They put forward then the grants that meet the criteria that should be considered, and then there's a vote taken. They're given point scoring, and you come up with an answer. So if we don't appoint somebody to a particular panel, it will simply mean that administration will make a decision based on the criteria, on the scoring criteria, and what funds are available. Councillor Coomans. Yeah.
I was just going to ask a question. I know I've been on these grant committees before, and we certainly do have each member of the panel has some voting, and it comes up with some sort of average. But then we do put our heads together at a meeting just to discuss, to come to a final conclusion. Because if you disagree with something, then you really need to discuss that with the other members and then come up with the final recommendation to council. So there is a meeting involved, albeit it may be very short.
Once you get down to the end of it, then there's a discussion around it, and then a recommendation goes to council. So the first one is the business initiative grants. Has anybody got a desire to be on that? Coomans, Councillor Coomans. Nobody else wants to do that one, right? That's what I'm going to do. You're going to go through. We'll get the names on them. We see which ones we've got. There's the Creative Communities Grant Assessment Panel. Councillor Oliver. Then there's a council-appointed member of the Climate Emergency and Environment Committee. We combined those two committees.
Councillor Livingston and I are members of that committee. We had a discussion beforehand, and she pulled out, so I'm in.
Councillor Coomans, anybody else? No. Then we've got the Community Events Grant Assessment Panel. Councillor Maidment, you want to go on that? Pardon? Councillor Thornton? You want to go on that?
How regular are the meetings?
One meeting.
A year.
There's one meeting each year.
Is it during the day?
Doesn't have to be. It can be after hours. Yeah.
Okay.
It's good to get different ones involved. The next one is the Community Wellbeing Grant Assessment Panel. Councillor Gardner. Anybody else interested? No. And then there's a member of the Heritage Advisory Committee. Councillor Maidment, you've been on there. You like that? Yeah, that's right. Yep. So there we have. We've got somebody on each one. Well done. So is there a mover that we accept all those nominations? Move Councillor Livingston. Seconder, Councillor Coomans. Any discussion relating to that? Should be straightforward. No, so I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Well done. Thanks very much for putting your names up. So 8.7 is the Community Donation Program. There's an application from the Mount Compass Tennis Club and the Mount Compass Area School Parents and Friends, and there's a recommendation there with 3 dot points. Councillor Scott, you wish to move that?
No, I wish to declare a conflict of interest to my involvement with the Fleurieu Road Safety Group. So I can leave the room if you like and not vote.
Yeah, we can split them up and do 1 and 2 and then do 3.
All right, as you wish then.
So is there a mover for 1 and 2? Councillor Miller?
I might actually prefer to do 1 separately, 2 separately and 3 separately. And I have a question regarding recommendation 1.
So you're moving 1 or just asking a question?
I'm just asking a question.
What's
Is the Mount Compass swamp on Department for Education land or is it on council land? And is this a small grants program or is this, something like this, would not that be better at a community grants environment application?
A couple of things. Firstly, I just need to declare a perceived conflict because there is a Mount Compass Area School Environmental Committee that I'm part of. Although the application isn't for anything that they're doing, it is in relation to the Mount Compass wetland or swamp. So it's a perceived, so I intend to stay and vote. I could probably answer the question, but I just need to ask Councillor that asked.
The land's, I don't believe the land's owned by the Education Department. It's Crown land. It's a significant wetland that both the school done a lot of work on, the Goolwa to Lap have done a lot of work on, and several other environmental groups. It happens to be a very, very special habitat for the fairy wren, is it? Yeah, and so it's as far as native bird species that are endangered, it's very, very sensitive area, very highly respected. But, yeah, do you want to move it?
I will. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's actually 5 hectares of swamp, and it is an important environmental facility within the agricultural farm, which is part of the school. My understanding is it is Crown land. It harbours native vegetation, wildlife like the wren that you mentioned. It's open to not only the school, but also it's open to the public, and it does have a fair bit of interest from state government environmentalist experts who are quite often there. They have an issue at the moment. They want to spend some money on the boardwalk, which is part of the swamp, and it does have some work health and safety issues. And they're getting close to having to put up a sign saying no one can get in. So this money is going to be very useful for them to bring it up to speed and be able to use it as a public facility. And they're also looking for some tools and things to help the students when they're doing the maintenance and working within there. And the environmental committee is actually working on part of that land to establish a kangaroo-proof fence, so they can then do indigenous species of plantings. If they don't have that fence, the kangaroos will eat it. So that's the sort of things they're doing. It's the parents and friends who are applying for this, and I reckon it's a great project that council should be supporting.
So we've got a seconder for it, Councillor Oliver. Any further discussion? Councillor Thornton?
I'm not against grants or anything. I just want to say that. But is there any other way, like every dollar counts at the moment with budget, is there any other funding that they can seek from someone that's not us? And could we facilitate that if we weren't to go ahead with this?
We don't know what's out there.
Through the chair, there's always funding available, but I don't know if it would meet the other criteria. They've presented a funding request to us. It meets the criteria for a community donations program. It also meets the criteria for a future environmental grant, I believe. But what's before us now is a request to council, and that needs to be voted upon. I'm just also, while I've got the microphone, just looking for a nod that I thought it was Department of Education that owned the land. Yes, thumbs up. Department of Education, not Crown land. Yes.
Is there any further discussion? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. I too am not against this initiative per se. This is an application to a small community donations program. This is $3,000 towards a project that is has environmental outcomes on Department for Education land. I just think it should be. I'll be voting against this for $3,000. If it was $1,000, I would support it in a heartbeat. But on the 12th of July, community environment grants that have a budget of $61,000 to allocate will be opening. And I just think that we should be considering this request, or the balance of if we did $1,000 here and the rest of it, they apply for a community environment grant. I just think $3,000 for a small grants program is, even $2,000, but $3,000. I won't be supporting a $3,000 request to this program.
Any further discussion? Councillor Maidment.
Yeah, this is obviously community donation funding, and I did notice that the West Ward hadn't utilised the entire amount that's allocated to their ward. So this is a bit fortuitous that these groups have come on board right now. But they will, if we give them 3,000, it'll deny the opportunity of other groups in the West Ward to come up with a an opportunity for $1,000. But here we are in June, and the community donation program finishes very shortly. So I can't see a problem with any of this. I'll be voting for it.
Councillor Livingston.
I'm definitely in support of the program, although if the land is on Department of Education land, it's still of the benefit of our region, children in our region, and they're making an effort to conserve the environment and put back to the environment. So I think it's a no-brainer to me, so I'm fully supportive.
Any further? If not, I'll put the recommendation. Oh, Councillor Coomans, you wish to.
Yeah, so look, firstly, my apologies. I did think it was Crown land, but obviously it's Education Department, which is semi-Crown. We're getting towards the end of the financial year. Applications for small grants like this need to be in by the end of this financial year. And Westwood has been underfunded with these types of grants. So this will take it up to the 38,000 that's allocated to this type of grant. So if we take all of the applications, it means we've met the budget that we set for it. In fact, we're just a smidge over. So I'd ask members please to support this, because this is a great project. It's not a school, it's a parents and friends group who are doing it, and they're a dedicated group, and they get involved in all sorts of things in the community. There was mention made of they did apply for $1,000, or it was $800, I think, for a play, blow-up play thing, which was part of the Santa sleigh a couple of years back. So I think they're doing the right thing, so I'd ask you to support this.
And I just remind you that the donations program, even though it's 3 wards, isn't set in concrete that if something goes over in a ward, more money in one area, it can't come from another. It's a donations program across Alexandrina. There's a guideline, so much per ward. Quite often we'll get an application for a donation which benefits more than one area, and so we've done that several times over the years. And so I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. So next one is 2, which is the donation for the Mount Compass Tennis Club. Is there a movement that we do that? Move, Councillor Gardner. Do you wish to speak to it? Seconded, Councillor Coomans. Any discussion?
Can I just say a couple of words on? Yeah. Look, this one to me is a no-brainer. It's to assist their junior coaching outreach program, and they're very keen to encourage as many people as possible to participate in tennis, and they're pretty passionate about tennis, and they're trying to encourage and engage kids in outdoor activities, in exercise, in sports, and social and play. So I think this is, to me, it's a no-brainer. So I'd ask members to support this.
Any further discussion on this one? If not, I will put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. This is the next one. So the next one is item 3, which you've declared a conflict of interest. Councillor Scott, how do you wish to handle that conflict? You're going to stay here and...
I believe it's not inappropriate to stay, but I won't vote or contribute. Thank you.
He's going to... If you're in your chair, you have to vote. You can stay in the chamber, but if you're not going to engage in the debate, that's fine. But if you're in the chair, you have to vote.
No, I'll leave then. It's inappropriate for me to vote, I believe. Thank you.
You can sit in the gallery if you want to. It's up to you. So we've got the recommendations regarding the road safety group. The reason this has come to council, it's within the guidelines for a ward donation. but unfortunately Councillor Scott had a conflict of interest and Councillor Nicholson was away on leave, so we thought we'd better to bring it to Council. Councillor Livingston, you wish to move it? Is there a seconder? Councillor, a question or moving it? Seconding it? Seconding it. Is there any discussion? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. I was actually hoping to, with the $1,000 that we may have had from the first one, put towards this one, because this is, this benefits lots and lots of people. I would have liked to have seen a more even split across these three requests for donation. And I understand that there will be some funding sought from Yankalilla and Victor Harbour as well. Is that correct? I understand.
Same from each council. Is there any further discussion? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Can we get Councillor Scott back? Somebody, please. So 8.8 is the 2022 to 2023 youth sponsorship program, and it's a distribution of the remaining funds, and there's a recommendation there distributing it to the 3 schools. Is there a move, Councillor Livingston? Seconded, Councillor Coomans. Any discussion? It's a nice, good thing to do. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 8.9 is the Clayton Bay Nursery and Environmental Centre request for a waiver of the annual lease fee. So they're asking not to pay the $500, just to pay the peppercorn rent of $1. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Scott? Well, both. You're moving 1 and 2, the peppercorn rent, or
Yes, 2A.
1 and 2A, yeah.
And in doing so, they do a great job. And I was comparing with the yacht club. They don't have the same capacity to generate funds from selling waterfront marinas, berths. I know they sell trees, but you don't make a lot of money out of selling trees at $2 each and all the work that goes into it. So I think it's not unreasonable that we support them to that degree.
Is this right? These bank accounts, they've got 44,000 in the trading account, 31 in another account, term deposit of 26,000. And a second term deposit of 25,000. There must be money in trees, if that's correct, because this is what I'm reading from the attachments here. And these leases, every time they roll over, and I don't know how long they've got with this one particularly, but they're in the thousands of dollars to actually get them drawn and drafted and then considered. So I don't know. I can't agree with this. I think they should be paying for their lease.
Thank you, Worship. I'm with Councillor Maidment here. This one and the following item, the Milang Railway Museum one, which I'll talk to after, if they do they get a discretionary rebate, and perhaps they should be paying the $500 per annum and then apply for a discretionary rebate of up to 75%. And is this a rescission motion on the 20th of February decision that we made? Like, I thought we'd already determined their annual fee was $500. and then perhaps they apply for a discretionary rebate or a community environment grant. I'm just confused about what we're doing here.
Through the chair, it was previously set at $500. They're requesting that it be changed to peppercorn. We're asking council to confirm whether it goes to peppercorn or be maintained at the $500. It is in a form of a rescission, but it's more like that decision was made, and now we're making that decision to revert it back.
Do they get a discretionary rebate at the moment?
So through the chair, they can apply for one, but they haven't historically applied for one yet.
Is there any further discussion? This group does amazing work. They are fantastic. It's a lot of work, and they do their propagation and what they do with the centre, and the amount of revegetation that they do. And yes, they get money, but they're only asking for a reduction in their rent because the money they've got, they apply for grants, they apply for environmental grants, and then they grow the plants and get out there and plant them. And they do an amazing job, and they supply other nurseries and planting programs around the place. So they're a group that I couldn't support them anymore. I think they're just tremendous. So Councillor Scott, do you want to speak to it again, or are you happy with what you've said?
Yes, I'm happy. I think it stands on its merits and let it go. Thank you.
So I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. 8.10 is the Port Milang Historic Railway Museum draft lease. The community consultation outcomes, there's a recommendation there with 5 dot points. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Gardner? Speak to it. Yep.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a really lovely little group of people who are passionate about trains, and they're doing a really great job in Milang. It is worth going over to spend some time there, and you can have lunch in the carriage. And they love to take people around and show them exactly the sorts of trains and engines they've got, the electric engine that they've got. So I would recommend.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Oliver. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. I just have a question. Do they pay rates on this land, and do they? I have no issue with the work that they do, and that's not what I'm asking here. This is a procedural and transparency question that I have. It's absolutely not about the work that they do. I just can't stress that enough. Same with the previous one. It wasn't about the work that they did. It was a process and transparency and accountability question. So who pays the rates on this land? And on page 269, I just want to clarify if there's restricting access by the community to this land by doing what we're doing here.
So through the chair, it's currently council land, so it's non-rateable. So what happens if we enter a lease is we apportion the percentage of that, and it gets a valuation put to it for rates, and then the rates would apply. When that was instigated, they could then apply for the 75% rebate once it's determined. And in regards to whether it'll limit access, I guess the point of a lease is that it is exclusive use, but generally when they're community leases, exclusive use is there for them to operate it for the general public's use.
It's wide open. You can't fetch a train in. It's got to be able to move around the place. It's a big area. Anybody can walk around and look at the trains. Councillor Scott.
Here's an opportunity to support something happening in a small town. You look at what money we spend in the big towns, and you look at the effort that these people have put into doing what they're doing, like the butter factory, turning Milang into a place that is a real destination. And I applaud what they do, and I think that we should be supporting this wholeheartedly. And I've just been down to their stall there on Easter weekend, and the things they were doing, bringing the town alive, was tremendous. So they get my support.
Any further discussion? Put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 8.11 is the draft Community Land Management Plan, round 2 consultation, and there's a recommendation with 4 dot points there. Is there somebody to move that? Councillor Maidment. Second, Councillor Miller used to second it. Is there any discussion? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. Just briefly, I like the idea of 6 monthly reporting. I think it's an excellent document, improving clarity, and especially the multi-use descriptions. They're great maps, and I think we should proceed to engagement. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 8.12 is the Harbour Master's residence, inclusion in the wharf tenancy activation strategy, expressions of interest, and there's a recommendation there. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Miller. Seconder? Councillor Gardner. Is there any discussion? Put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Is it, no. Got a bit of a time lag going on again, so unfortunately it's getting late. Is there anybody against it? Thank you. It's carried unanimously. 8.13 is the community transport. So it's the Southern Community Transport Service and Hills Community Transport contributions and services, and there is a recommendation that the report be received. Councillor Miller, you moving that?
No, I just want to declare a potential or perceived conflict of interest, a general conflict due to where I work, or to my employment, and I don't believe I need to, but I will leave the chamber even though we're just receiving this report. Thank you.
So there's the recommendation there that the report be received. Moved Councillor Gardner. Second, Councillor Livingston. Any discussion? No, so I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. So can we get Councillor Miller back? So 8.14 is the proposed fees and charges for 2023-24, and there is a recommendation there before you. Moved Councillor Gardner.
Yes, Your Worship, may I say that it is worthwhile if you have a puppy to take the opportunity to get free registration for the first 6 months. I think it's a great idea. And I think that our fees are quite reasonable, really.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Scott. Is there any discussion? Councillor Miller.
Just a comment about the fees for photocopying the annual business plan and budget. I think that it's the one document that tells the community what we're doing, and it needs to be accessible either where people are naturally congregating or community groups that request one. I think there should be in future some consideration to providing them either at a concession rate or for free. I think we overlook a big demographic in our area. Not everyone reads everything online, and it's hard to read a big document online when you're elderly. And generally, the people who are interested in the business of local government are in that older demographic. So I think our fees are very reasonable, and I do think that perhaps the business hub fees need to have a bit of a look at, but that's a subject for another day. But thank you, I support this.
Any further discussion? Councillor Oliver.
The only thing I wonder about is the Oscar W fees. That's a commercial venture, and I think we should be looking at set those fees, to entice people to come on. I'm worried that the fees are set at a level now that make it not attractive for families to go. So I wonder whether they can be subject to review of an Oscar W marketing plan or some other mechanism. I don't think it's a standard cost recovery charge of council. Thank you.
Any further discussion? So I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. That's probably something the Oscar W thing is something that our liaison can bring back to council after a discussion about fees. Then there's no. 8.15 for our regional waste.
Yes, declaring a conflict of interest due to my employment, and I will leave the chamber.
Okay, thank you. So 8.15 is the Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority third quarter budget review 2022-23, and there's a recommendation there that we receive that for the period ending 31st of March, noting no changes to council's contributions. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Coomans. Seconded Councillor Gardner. Is there any discussion? Councillor Miller.
Just a quick comment, Your Worship. I think this is a perfect example of where, the council is experiencing increasing energy costs as much as everybody else in our community, and across all areas of its operations. And I just dot point 2 on page 432. So how was that picked up, that non-accruing of some charges from 2018?
Through the chair, that was us going through invoices, well, not invoices, line by line, and just having a look at past expenditure and realising that it was there. Realising that there was a big catch-up amount from a couple of years ago, and then looking to see if we were charging any more, and we've now got back up to date again. They were pretty happy to receive our invoice.
Is there any further discussion? So I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. So we can get Councillor Livingston back, please. Thanks. So 8.16 is the Fleurieu Regional Aquatic Centre Authority, the third quarter budget review for 2022-23, and there's a recommendation there with 2 dot points.
Can we split the recommendations, please?
Can we? Yep, we can. So we'll do, we'll do one first. So we're going to do dot point 1 first. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Oliver. Councillor Maidment, second it. Is any discussion? Not. We'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. So we go to 2. Is there a mover for 2? Is there a move for 2? So we've asked you twice, so it will lapse through want of a mover. So that's the end of that item. So it can either just lapse through no support, or we can go back to them and say we do not endorse it. So if somebody, okay, be a bit better way to do it. Is there a seconder for that, not endorsing it? Councillor Scott? Yep. What the impact is. Yep. We'll have to bring a report back. Yep. So we'll have to bring a report back to see, after discussion with them, to see what the impact of that is on us. Is there any further discussion on it, Councillor?
Yeah, I've just got a question. Have Victor Harbour Council considered this? Or is it at their meeting tomorrow night or something?
Through the chair, I'm not sure if Victor Harbour have gone first or not. I can quickly check on that by the end of the meeting if you want. Yeah.
Any further discussion, Councillor Miller?
Sorry, Wish. I actually was trying to ask a question when it was lapsing, but the first time, I just want to understand the implications of what happens if we don't support this, what the next step is, or what this means. Do we have an obligation to actually meet this request or not?
Well, administration will bring a report back to us, let us know what the impact of that is. You can't just put it out there, can you?
Can I talk? Through the chair, FRAC are advising us that they needed another 108,000 to support an additional increase in electricity and capital expenditure for 22-23. That comes to 108 divided by the 2 for Victor Harbour and Alexandrina. That's saying that they need those funds basically to keep the lights on. So if we're not endorsing the extra $54,000, I'm a little bit, well, what does that mean? I think that we are an owner in this place. We are running this place. They've advised us that this is what funds have come into the place. It's going to cost an extra $54,000 to get to the end of the year. I know that you need to have electricity on to have things running. As far as the capital expenditure goes, I'm racing to try and work out what the divide is, because one, again, you have to leave the electricity on, but is there part of the capital expenditure that they could put off if we don't endorse that money? I would much prefer that the 54,000, this is just a preference, that the 54,000 is endorsed, but we send them again a strong message of finding that 54,000 in savings or alternatives. But they need to continue to operate.
So, Councillor Coomans, you got a question or wish to speak to it? Or?
What I was going to suggest is that I'll foreshadow a motion that if this number 2 is not approved by council, that I'd be moving that we do endorse it, but with a what you suggested in terms of writing to the Fleurieu board about FRACA, sorry, wrong one, writing to FRACA as suggested.
So, is any discussion on the first part, what we're talking about? Councillor Scott, you. Yep.
If that were the case, part of our advice, can somehow we suggest that prices are put up to try and recoup some of this money? Because again, I've been confronted by a ratepayer who said they need to put the prices up.
You've asked the question.
So let's
get the answer.
Through the chair, that is a message that we sent back to the board before, and the board have taken that on board, and they are raising those fees.
Any further? Councillor Livingston.
Just noting that a lot of people have already spoken, is it possible to move a motion to go into informal discussion? Can I move a motion to go into informal discussion? Please.
You can request it. What do you hope to gain by it? So,
I want to ask another councillor a question. So if I can do that, then that's fine.
Ask the question, and then to save a lot of messing around. If you ask the question and let us know who the councillor that you wish to ask, Nigel will ask the councillor for an answer for you.
Okay, I would just like to know from FRACA's point of view, since this last came to council and we gave them a strong message that we weren't going to support any increase in the budget, what has happened since and what the implications from FRACA are, so we can all understand it a bit better rather than just say no to an increase of $54,000 and then, as the CEO said, the lights get turned off.
Through the chair, since that time, I and the CEO, Victor Harbour, have met with FRACA. We met with a combination of the FRACA board and the FRACA audit committee. We talked about getting that review in place so that we can have a look at getting a different structure in place, which will be bringing advice back to council in the future. They understand that costs need to be put under control, but they also, the budget they set earlier this year, they didn't understand what the electricity costs were going up. We talked about it in the last agenda item when you were out of the room with FRARA, that the rising energy costs, they're experiencing it as well. They do realise that costs can't keep going up. They listened to council last time. We're putting up the fees to try and compensate that next year as well. But at the same time, they also raise that putting up fees does not always generate additional income, because when the fees go up, people sometimes stop coming. But they're willing to try that because they're willing to try anything to make this place more viable. The message has been loudly received by FRACA. They are trying to change things for the betterment, but in this instance, additional funding has come in. They've reported it to council. They're asking for an endorsement by 54,000, maybe different words instead of endorsing it, but note it, endorse it, but want FRACA to continue to try and get the budget under control is a message to be received. I don't think we've got much choice except for to accept this additional money, unless there's something that's identified that we say you do not spend this on capital program. But when it does come down to energy costs, which is what it's talking about in the report, an invoice has been sent, we need to pay invoices. Therefore, my feeling is we need to endorse it. And I know that a board member is going to put her hand up and speak to it soon as well.
Question, yeah.
Do we have any further information as to what FRACA are planning to do in terms of capital improvements in relation to solar?
Through the chair, they are working on the solar side of things. They have gone out to tender. I believe that those would be coming back any day now, and a proposal will be put to council. So that is well down the train of getting that under, bringing those costs back to council.
Could you please explain very clearly what the implications will be if we don't pay the extra 54,000? I'm not sure if the lights go off. Do they not have reserves? Do they not have other areas of cost saving?
You can ask a question.
Thank you.
Don't talk, because if you talk, you'll close the debate to the mover.
Through the chair, they're asking for an extra 54,000 because that's what their budget wants. And this is why I'm saying that you can change your narrative to say that you need to find the additional or endorse it, but also bring back savings of equal amount of 54,000 or report back to council. But it's very difficult that is expenditure which is going to occur in this organisation. And I suppose with 11 days left in this financial year, they're bringing you what, at their third quarter review, what they believe is going to be forecast to get them to the end of the financial year. I don't know exactly what will occur if you say you do not endorse it. I think that I will be having to come back to council and then say exactly what needs to occur to do that, because I don't understand the ramifications of not giving that money, what they're going to do to get to the end of the year. I suspect, given that the third quarter review was on the 31st of March, these are costs which have already occurred and that they've already assumed, because it's like a business. They're saying this is what we're forecasting to go to the end of the year. And we, as owners of this business, are being told what that amount is. I will give you more information next time of exactly what would occur.
I would be happy to withdraw my motion to not pay the money, but I think it does need words that you're saying are stronger.
Like that, you've moved it and seconded and debated, so all you can do is not support it. Let it fail. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. I think we have a moral obligation to pay this money. We are an owner of this business. It is a reflection of rising energy costs that are, as I mentioned in the previous item. And I would note that Councillor Coomans has foreshadowed that he would move the lapsed motion, and I would second that because I was trying to ask a question of the implications of what would happen if we didn't support this. So I'll be voting against this on the hope that it's lost so that we can actually address this issue of the $54,000 request.
Councillor Gardner.
This is a very difficult issue. What we need to remember is that we are a regional aquatic centre. We aren't in the middle of Adelaide. We don't have hundreds of thousands of people that will flock to the pool. We have a limited number of people, and the people of this district, both Alexandrina and Victor Harbour, pleaded for us, for both councils, to have an aquatic centre, and we have provided one. And many, many people in this district rely on the aquatic centre. The reason that we have a shortfall at this present time is because the electricity has gone up astronomically. We are working quite diligently and quite quickly just in the last little while to make sure that we have now put out for tenders for the solar. So hopefully something will happen in the near future. But what we need to remember also is that, and I've talked about this before, we've got wonderful libraries, and there are less and less people attending the libraries to take out books, but it hasn't stopped us from pouring money into our libraries. No one around this table has complained about the fact that we are putting so much money into libraries. I love the library, and I would be devastated to think that we would withdraw financial support to our library. And it's exactly the same as the aquatic centre. I don't attend the aquatic centre. I don't like swimming pools myself, but I know that there are a huge number of people who do. And a lot of those people really depend on that pool, particularly the rehabilitation pool. I think $54,000 is a small amount of money to ensure that we provide a service for many, many people in our community. And I will not be voting for this motion, and I'll be waiting to see what happens after this.
Any more discussion? So we're putting the motion or recommendation that we do not endorse the money. So all those in favour? Against? Against? So that's lost. So we now have Councillor Coomans' foreshadowed motion that we do it. Is that correct? We go ahead with it?
Yes, I was going to suggest that as per recommendation 2, and I think we were going to add a little bit of text about, is it up there or not? We're going to correspond with FRACA in relation to this council strongly, yeah.
Okay with that? Happy with that?
Yeah, happy to move that.
Right. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Miller?
I'll seconder if we can also add and recognises the impact of rising energy costs on this business.
Yep, Councillor Coomans is happy with
Could I
that.
just ask a question?
The impact, recognises the impact of.
You ask a question? Yeah.
Yeah, I've just got a question in terms of the electricity that they use. Is it on some sort of group scheme? I mean, can it be brought under council's general energy accounting system, or is it something that they do separately?
Through the chair, they're on a local government procurement contract as we are as a council, so they're already participating in that tender process.
Is there any further discussion? So we'll put the recommendation that we endorse this. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Go to 8.17, which is the Southern Hills Local Government Association draft budget for 2023-24. There's a recommendation that we approve that. Oh, there's a correction of the figure from the agenda to this, what's on the screen now. It's not quite right, so it's been corrected. So is the removal that we go ahead with that? Councillor Gardner? A seconder? Councillor Scott? Any discussion? Councillor Miller?
Your Worship, I'd just like to, I should have done it earlier, declare just a general conflict of interest because of of my employment, but I don't think I have a material conflict, so I will be remaining in the chamber and voting on this. Thank you.
I can't see the conflict anyway. So is there any discussion? So if not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 8.18 is Lot 10 Langhorne Creek Road Project Steering Group. It's the highlight reports. There's a recommendation there that we note the minutes. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Livingston. Is there a second to Councillor Miller? Any discussion? We're just noting the report. No, so yeah, Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Just given that it was 4 weeks ago that the committee this steering group met on the 16th of May, I just wondered if we could have an update on the business case and the infrastructure investigations, where they are at. And then I do have a couple of other questions as well. Thank you.
Matt will come and see what he can answer.
Thanks. Through the chair, the business case is still going through the tender process. We are getting closer. We've got, I think there's 3 companies that have put in a tender for that work, and then from that we'll see what they've quoted and how much money is remaining, so that we can then go out for tender for the infrastructure investigations.
Councillor Miller.
There was an action that we would explore a RV park or camp draft. What it would take to do that? Is that being followed up?
Through the chair, we've endeavoured to make contact with the contact that we had previously with the RV park, but haven't had a return call for that one as yet. And there's been no further progress in relation to camp draft at this stage, other than just getting some information from their representative, Taz McEwen.
Any further discussion? So we'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 8.19 is the minutes of the Section 41 Committee of the Ratalang, Basham Beach and Horseshoe Bay Advisory Committee. And there's a recommendation there that we note their minutes of the 11th of May 2023. Moved Councillor Scott. Seconded Councillor Coomans. Any discussion relating to that? Just receive the minutes. No. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 8.20 is a report from the Section 41 Ratalang, Basham Beach and Horseshoe Bay Advisory Committee of the 11th of May. There are a couple of recommendations. They can no reason why that can't be done together. They both sort of say the same thing. So is there a mover for that? Councillor Coomans.
I'm assuming the CEO is happy to be the trustee of this group. Thank you.
We've got a seconder, Councillor Scott. Any discussion? Put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 8.21 is the minutes of the Section 41 Committee, the Cemeteries Advisory Committee, and with just noting their minutes of the 4th of May 2023. Moved Councillor Maidment. Seconder, Councillor Gardner. Any discussion or those minutes? No. So I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. 8.22 is the Chief Executive Officer's report, and there's a recommendation that we might split this one into two. If you want me to split it into two, I will. Or yes or no? Yes, so we'll do it in two. So we'll do dot point 1 first. The report be received. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Maidment. Second, Councillor Miller. Any discussion, any questions? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. I really like this project's update, but I found it really hard to read this time around. So I'm just wondering in future it can be provided either in a different format or because it was really blurry and I had to expand it a lot and it was just pretty tricky to read. And maybe some commentary on some key challenges, projects, if we could in future, please.
Through the chair, we can generally do that, but due to the size of this agenda, the system was reducing it down. But in the future, I suppose we could also produce it as a secondary attachment. So we'll take that on board.
Any further discussion or questions of Nigel regarding his report? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. So dot point 2 is regarding the Nankita Road budget adjustment. It's explained in there. Is there anybody to move that? Councillor Coomans.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm happy to move it, but I'm willing to move it. This is one of those roads, and members are probably aware that it's often criticised as a pothole-laden road, and it's one of the few roads that's actually designated as a B-double heavy transport road. It probably should have never been a council road. It should probably have been a state government. But the information I got was that they're happy to take it, but we need to bring up to 100% efficiency. And you know, this road is very difficult. I know we a few years ago we did a corner which was close to the shopping precinct, and staff then decided to do it at a 200 mil depth, which is, you know, the proper way of doing it. And that road has stood up really, really well, and it's on a corner, which means it's affected even more with distributed weights and things of heavy vehicles. So hopefully the extra funding can be found within the the broad capital program, but it really does need this work done properly. 7 years versus 20 years, it's probably, to me, no-brainer, but, you know, there is money, there's significant money involved with it. And so I'd commend it to the members that let's do it properly.
Through the chair, I just wanted to give a little bit more of an update because I realised that it was pretty quick just before the agenda went out. We only gave a few lines. So in regards to it was 7 years last time. What we're trying to do, what the $900,000 would give to us is a 10 to 15 year lifespan, but the extra 300,000 that we're now calling for will give more of a 20-year lifespan. We have been negotiating with the company for quite some time to get that 20-year lifespan, and that only just came through last Thursday, and that's why it went through then. What the new material is, it's ideal for that road because it gets so saturated, which I think is what you're talking about there before. The current road base has failed in the past because it gets too saturated. This is half grant funded road. So that's why we need to start on this straight away. The road that was going to be treated is 1.3 kilometres in length. We have already identified over the weekend about 150,000 from the capital budget that we'll be able to move towards that, and we'll continue to look for more going forward. The contractor is Downer. They're ready to start to go. We'll give them a call tomorrow based upon the result, and they will get moving. They're ready to start this project in the next 2 weeks. So I just thought I'd give that quick update.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Maidment. Any discussion, further discussion? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. This is going to add $300,000 or 150,000, I understand it, to borrowings, I'm assuming. So I guess it's such a significant change in scope and cost that I just am trying to understand what we're not going to do by doing this, or are we just going to still do everything that we said we'd do and just add to borrowings to do this? I get that we have to do it. It's really unfortunate that after 7 years an asset has failed, and I understand that as much as I can based on the information that's in the report. But I just wonder if we'll get a little bit more information in terms of what we're not going to do or adjust. We're in the middle of consulting on the budget. So I think, you know, perhaps there is some little bit further commentary that we need on what we're going to not do or how we're going to accommodate this in our budget.
And through the chair, what we'll do early in the new financial year is have a list of carried forward items, and we'll detail exactly what we are carrying forward and what we're not, and also how we've accommodated this change. So additional details will be brought forward in the new year.
Councillor Maidment.
This is a must-do project. As Councillor Coomans alluded, this road has failed, and for many reasons. The fact that we can get it done very quickly, will address a lot of issues on that road. I've been hearing about Nankina Road for 10 years, I think, and it's about time. And whatever we can push out, I'd be quite happy to see this go ahead straight away. Thank you.
Any further discussion? We'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. We can always see if we can get the state government to take it over after we've fixed it up beautifully. See how we go.
Can you also confirm that
Yeah, so Nigel just said to me, he's been advised Victor Harbour Council did approve the extra money for Fracker. We just did. So item 9 is council member reports. 9.1 is presiding members report, which is my report. There's a recommendation that report for May 2023 be received. Moved, Councillor Gardner. Is seconder, Councillor Livingston. Any questions or discussion about my report? No, that's good. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously, I think. 9.2 is Council Member Activity Report. We have a report from Councillor Gardner for May 2023, and there's a recommendation that report be received. Moved, Councillor Maidment. Is there a seconder? Councillor Oliver. Anybody got any questions? Are there any verbal, I'm getting to that, are there any verbal updates members would like to make?
If I could just ask a question, Mayor Parkes, I've represented you at a number of functions now, and I'm very pleased to do so. We've got 2 to do this weekend, and again, very pleased to do it. I'm just wondering, do council members expect me to provide a report on all of those, or can I do it collectively at the end of the year as to what I attended? I'm happy either way.
I think you would just do like each month from the beginning, like this day, I did this one, I did that one, and whatever. If you want to, if it's some of them, you go along to, like I do, and all you're doing is you're sitting there representing the council and watching them go through their presentations and see what goes on. Yeah, so that's entirely how you feel, whether you think there's something worthy of bringing back or not. It's discretionary, really. It's not like going to a conference or something similar. So is any further? So are there any elected members' verbal updates they would like to add? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously, and we come now to item 10, which is confidential items.
South Coast Television, your community, your voice.